Okay, so after many failed attempts yesterday at putting a stupid handle, or getting the handle shaped and stuff like that yesterday for the Gunslinger knife here, went ahead and we epoxied the guard on. We're going to go do another way of doing this, which is not a way I like doing it for one reason, and that's because the handle and everything's been blackened. And when we go to put the handle on and start to shape it, we're going to shape a lot of it off of the knife first. But when we put it on, we got to do the refinements and stuff on there. We're going to start taking off a lot of the black and the oxide or whatever you want to call it. We're going to be taking a lot of that off. So to avoid taking it off, what I was doing in the past was I get everything and get it pretty much about 90% done. And then when I got it black and I was able to put it on, and they all turned out fine. For whatever reason, this time it was just so much harder because the actual guard itself isn't quite flat, and that is what was making it difficult. So unfortunately, I didn't feel like trying to sit there handstand and getting flat and stuff like that. I was just too damn lazy, I'll be honest. So in this case here, though, is just I went ahead and I epoxied on there, and I got it on there. It's nice and tight right now. I cleaned off whatever epoxy I could with just a little knife here. It comes right off pretty easily. Cut it off, got it flat, and then I already got the pieces of wood cut for the scales marked, and then I kind of drew them out, and they're pretty much on there where they need to be. So next we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and I'm going to take the knife out of the vise there. I'm going to clamp the knife to the scale here, and then we're going to drill the holes. We're going to do that for each side. So that's what we're doing next. Okay, so anyway, all right. So got it clamped on now. So now what I'm going to do is just I'm going to drill this hole first, and then once it's drilled, I'm going to put a pin through that, and then I'm going to drill this hole, put a pin through that, and then I'll have to take the clamp off at that point, but these two pins will kind of hold it in place from moving around too much, and then I can pin the other side. Okay, one scale done. Now I'm going to go ahead and do the other side here. I'm going to do the same exact thing. I'm going to clamp it onto it, and we're going to drill probably about 2 holes, put the pins in, and I can remove the clamp and go from there. Alright, probably been smart if I just stick with my original plan, but I want to try something else that other knife makers have done before, which is they'll drill the side, the scale on the one side, and then they'll put a pin through it to kind of mark where it's supposed to go. Then they'll clamp the other scale on, and then they will drill through the one scale and the knife, and they'll just do it that way so that everything definitely does line up. So that's the route I'm going. Just want to make sure everything's holds it in place there. Take this out here so I can drill this hole straight through. Alright, that was the last one. Alright, so now I got all the holes drilled through. So now the next step would be to go ahead and drace or trace, trace the tang on here now. I did it once before, but I'm just gonna redo it because the wood moved it anyway or something like that, and we don't want to have an issue with lineup, and I don't feel like having to do this for a fifth time. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do is I'm gonna pull obviously the pins out, and then I'm gonna pin each scale to the tang, and then I'm going to trace the tang onto the scale, and then I'm going to cut out with the bandsaw. So let's get to it. There it's traced on there. I can take this side off and I can do the other side. See? Traced. Alright. You won't be able to see it too well, I'm sure. But you see the lines that I drew? Notice how it doesn't line up over here anymore? That's why we retrace it. Alright, that one's done. So something I am going to do a little bit is normally I will scuff up the tang here. Well, when you scuff it up a little bit, it doesn't need to be a whole lot, just enough. It adds more surface area for the epoxy to adhere to. So I'm going to scuff up the tang a little bit, and then I will clean it. So. Plus, when I do that, it really makes the serial numbers I put on there pop. I probably should be wearing gloves. But the whole pandemic, I can't find any. That's been cleaned. Now I'm going to take a moment and I'm going to clean the pins. Most people don't even bother with the pins, but I just want to make sure that they are clean. You can, and I've done it in the past, clean the scales a little bit. You know, if there's any grease and stuff on there and dust, you can go ahead and do that. Now, I would recommend you work in an environment where there's no dust, like on a clean table, not like I'm out here on my workbench. Alright, so I got the gaps here, so it'll kind of move. So then what I can do is I can just shovel in the epoxy that way instead of if it was a 24-hour epoxy, I just put the epoxy on both sides of the scale, put it together, put the pins through, then clamp it and everything. There's really no rush because this is a 5-minute epoxy. Time is not my friend. Now, something also I want to tell you guys a little trick here, and I totally forgot to do it on this one. But normally I'll take some painter's tape and I'll line along the spine of the tangs here, all the way around, and then I'll cut it so that way the painter's tape is going over the edge here. So that way any epoxy does leak out, it gets on top of the painter's tape. So then as I'm grinding it down and stuff like that, whatever, I can just peel that right off, and I'm not taking any of the black coating off or anything else like that. But I forgot to do that. Of course, fraught with mistakes on this particular video. I mean, just unbelievable. Like, I'm disappointed about how many mistakes. I've made this many mistakes since my very first knife I've made. It's pretty bad. Alright, so as you can see, I am cutting the tape along the edge here, and I actually kind of have it angled into the metal, to the tang here, the razor blade here, so that way I don't have any overlapping onto the tang here itself. And that way now the edge has a layer of protection on there, so that way the epoxy won't get to that. So now I'm going to put the scales back on after I got it clean there like that. And we'll go from there. It's starting to get tacky, which means it's starting to dry, so I need to hurry up and compress this stuff. Okay. Now, clamp that here. Tighten it down here. Make sure you always have your clamps and stuff readily available. And then I will clamp it right here as well. Now don't clamp it so tight you squeeze all the epoxy out of it. You don't want to squeeze the snot out of it, but you definitely want it tight enough that it's going to, you know, if there's any kind of small warps that the scale can bend to, you want it to kind of fill those in a little bit. Alright, so now what I'm going to do real quick while I have the opportunity to, if I know where the dang thing went to, I'm going to start cleaning up some of the epoxy that does squeeze out using some Q-tips and acetone. Okay, so I've let it dry for about an hour, hour and a half or so. Took the clamps off, everything's fine. Now what I did next is any of these that were extra long, I just cut off using like bolt cutters. To save my grinding belts, just a little bit of work here. Now, to do most of the shaping, I might do a little bit on this grinder here, but I still use my small grinders for the shaping on this just because I have those belts and I want to save the belts for these for as much as I can until I get more for, you know, doing beveling and stuff like that. So now, this is going to be a fun part because I'm going to try really hard not to get on the guard and stuff like that. I'm sure I'm going to be taking some of the coating off of it. I'm just going to have to hit it with some bluing. Oh, but it is what it is. So with that, I'm going to get the other little grinder set up, and then we'll go ahead and start grinding and shaping the handle.
Got them ground down. Now it's time to start getting it even with the guard and the spine and all the other stuff, the profile of the pan.
Okay, so I got down to 120 grit on the belt grinder there. Now this belt grinder I can go all the way up to like 1,000 grit and stuff. I'm not going to do all that. Pretty much what I'm going to do next is I'm going to clamp it onto my vise here, and I'm going to hand sand it, starting with 220 grit, getting up to about 550 grit, and pretty much that's all I'm going to be doing with this with that. Then once that's completely hand sanded on 550, I'm actually going to stain it a darker color because it's got to be a darker color. So that I'm going to go ahead and clamp this on here and start hand sanding. Okay, so I've got it sanded down to 500 grit. It's very smooth right now. It's, you know, if I wasn't gonna stain it, all I would do at this point is kind of clean it up a little bit, and then use like a tung oil or something. But I'm gonna stain it next. So what I got to do is I got to remove all the dust and everything like that on it. I got to clean everything off of it, and then I'm gonna go ahead and apply regular stain to it. The stain that I use for this is Rust-Oleum. What's great about this particular brand is that it only requires really one coat, one application. You put it on there, let it sit for like 15 minutes, and you can just wipe it off, and then you can buff it, which is nice. If you want a nice shine, you can buff it then. Once that's done, then I'm going to go through, touch up all the metal parts here. That's nice and shiny with some bluing. Luckily, the bluing won't affect the wood. Actually, I guess if I really wanted to, I could blue it first and then stain it, which is actually probably a smarter idea. But the bluing doesn't affect the wood. I've tried it before. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and clean this up, and then we'll go ahead and get to staining. Okay, so I'm gonna blue it first real quick, and then I'm gonna stain it. So this is all I use. It's just a super blue, liquid gun bluing, and what you can apply several coats. The only problem with this, though, is you apply the bluing, you're supposed to wash it off and then apply a couple times, wash it off, apply. That's the only issue, is because with this, I can't wash it off. So usually what I'll do is I'll do it down here first, so that way. And then once you apply it, you're supposed to let it set for about 30 seconds to a minute, and then you wipe it off, and then you do it all over again. Okay, so everything's been blued and darkened all over again, or at least this part has, you know. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and stain the handle. Alright, it's been about 15 minutes. Now we're going to go through and start wiping off all the stain here. And it's going to be a bit of a pain in the ass to kind of pain in the butt to get off a little bit. I might have let it sit a little too long. Hopefully not. But you'll see once it starts coming out. It's a nice dark color. Alright, well, there you have it, guys. The Gunslinger Knife here. Not a terrible knife. This one actually fought me a lot more than the other ones for whatever reason. But as you can see, it came out fine here. The handle's definitely darker. You could clearly see the brass pins on here. The spine is now nice and dark. It's not bright and polishy. It's actually pretty much a good solid black, so which we want. Any little blemishes that we had on here, like when I accidentally touched that, I went ahead and added a little bluing to that spot there. There's some minor little things here and there I still got to do to this knife. Nothing major, nothing that warrants me having to record it. Just minor touch-ups here and there, so that way it's more to my standard. Now, by all means, I want to point out a few things about this knife so you guys know where I'm coming from here. This is meant to be a used-looking knife. It's not meant to look pristine, which is something I have to get out of my head, because that is a problem I run into. Is that I'm always stuck on it's got to look like a piece that gets hung on a wall or something like that, and that's not the case here. This is supposed to look used, so having nicks and scratches and stuff on here is really not a big deal. But with that being said, that's the Gunslinger Knife. The Gunslinger Knife is not meant to look pristine. It's supposed to have a worn look to it, but it's very tough and durable. It's 1095 steel is what we used, obviously. White oak handle was about an inch and a half scale, or sorry, half-inch scale that I cut and shaped ourselves. These are 5/8 brass pins instead of my typical 1/8, or I was supposed to use 5/8? 5/32, excuse me, 5/32 brass pins, and then a mild steel guard on it. Now, like I stated towards the beginning of the video here, this is historically inspired. It's not historically accurate. Okay, so if this was going to be a bushcraft type knife, this definitely would be a lot thicker. There were knives designed like this with this thinness in mind and stuff like that, but it wasn't really used to go out into the wilderness with. It was something maybe they carried around, everyday carry, concealed under their arm or something along those lines there. That, guys, hopefully you found this video helpful and at least entertained with my massive amounts of mistakes I kept making on this cursed knife. If you found this video helpful, entertaining, whatever, go ahead and hit that like button. Also, if you got any comments or suggestions, leave them down below. And don't forget to click that subscribe button and hit that bell for more notification. With that, guys, thank you for watching, and I'll see you later.